Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films, little kegs and eggs type of podcast. Starting off the morning with some good football talk here, Greg. We have a lot of different things to get to. The team refuses to win a football game, though, so that's kind of at the crux of the issue here locally. But even though they have not yet found ways to close out games, there are places where incremental progress is being made, and I think that's important for fans to remember.
I would agree. Look, I mean, obviously they've had a punt blocked in each of the first two games, which changed the games dramatically. Um, Look, you're in a win-lose business, so they've lost both those games. But I thought in the second game, particularly offensively, in the pass game and the play of Levis was a step in the right direction. He knows, everybody knows, so we don't really need to spend a lot of time on it, that the reckless, stupid plays have to stop. He's aware of that. I mean, I remember, and I'm not making a direct comparison, so I don't want people to think I am, but I remember in the first couple of years of Josh Allen's career, he did a lot of that, and that settled down quite a bit, obviously. So Levis has to work through that and just not do those stupid things. But I thought overall he played much better week two than he did week one.
Yeah, and that's kind of the place that I wanted to start because obviously the bonehead moment is easy for people to kind of gravitate on, right?
Right.
But it is more than just that. And when last we talked, coming out of that Chicago game, it was about him settling down, them trying to get him settled in with some easy completions and things like that. He's also under more pressure, worth noting, Greg, because the right side of the offensive line was the problem this week. The left side was the problem in week one. He's under more
Yeah.
pressure than any quarterback in football right now.
And that's true. And I thought it's funny you say that because I thought that Ravens really had a tough outing in this game.
Yeah.
And the thing that continues to show up, and it probably will not change at this point. And I'm not an O-line coach, so I don't know how Bill Callahan sees it. Maybe it's a technique issue. Maybe it's just his body is such, but he's just not really strong. He's not a strong player. So what happens too often is he gets driven back into the pocket. And again, I don't know if there's ways from a technique standpoint with hand usage and foot usage. I don't know if there's ways to get that corrected. But the bottom line is he just doesn't play strong in pass protection. He struggles to, as they say, set his house and anchor.
Yeah. And on that fumble in particular, he's getting pressure from the right. He tries to leap to his left and does that boneheaded toss to
Yeah,
Todd
you just,
that
I
ends up
mean,
being the
you
backward
just
pass.
can't do that. I mean, we know that. And like you said, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. Everybody knows that you just can't do that.
No, he finishes the game 19 of 28, 192. He has the touchdown to Calvin Ridley, a really, really incredible catch by Ridley. I thought, from my vantage point in the press box, Greg, I thought that pass for sure got picked off before Ridley kind of like caught it on his
Yeah,
arm and
he,
brought it
he
in.
probably made the wrong throw there. I mean, the wrong read.
Yeah,
He had Hopkins wide open on the shallow crosser, and it was 2nd and 9, so there was no reason, to do that. But look, we know he has an aggressive mentality, Will Levis, that is, and he's going to make throws like that. He actually made a pretty good throw, and it was a great catch. But I mean, Ridley was not really open in a strict sense, but the ball was well thrown. I don't know how they coach that, but my sense is he probably made the wrong read.
well, and I guess that's the place that I'd like to start, Greg, because we don't know what specifically his reads are on any given play, right? We can
Some
try to,
we do. I mean, some I do, but I can't say that on 100% of them. There are
right.
some that are basic route concepts versus particular coverage, and you do know what the read is, but I can't say that on 100% of his dropbacks. No.
Sure. So I guess from your vantage point, is he seeing things more clearly than maybe he did in week one, or even going back to his rookie year when he's going through the starts? Because there are some opportunities in this game where Hopkins looks open to me, for example, Greg, the 2nd and 9 play. There's some other opportunities where Hopkins could have been a player that he went to that he had an opportunity to make a play. But I wondered from your vantage point, is Levis seeing things clearly enough based on what the offense is providing him?
I think that's a work in progress. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes yes, and sometimes I'm a little uncertain, but again, I don't know. I know one play that has been pointed out, I believe, was it the first down play late in the game when they had a chance to tie and they got into the red zone. the high red zone, I believe
Yeah.
it was.
Mhm.
And a lot of people have pointed out that Ridley was open on the crosser. But he initially looked to Hopkins. Now, as you probably know, Gardner matched up to Hopkins on all 4 plays down in the red zone. And I think he matched up to him pretty much on the final drive. He did not do that all game, but he matched up to him clearly on the final 4 plays that once they got into the red zone late in the game. And on that particular play, the first down play, Hopkins was jammed by Gardner and totally disrupted his route. And that's where Levis initially looked, and a lot of people have pointed out that, well, Ridley was wide open on the crosser from the backside. That's the kind of play that's hard to know exactly the sort of this timing of his read, because clearly he looked to the left side to the 2-man route, which was a high-low concept on that side. Did he stay on it a beat long? Maybe. He did kind of take a peek at Ridley coming across, who, yes, was open, but it's hard to though that's hard to know. I'm not going to sit here and say, boy, he blew that. You just don't know how that's coached. Should he have gone to Ridley? Did he not process it? I can't answer that with certainty, Buck.
Yeah, and I guess for the context of the audience, we're just trying to figure out what is the most fair way to assess this quarterback, right,
Of
Greg?
course.
For the
Yeah.
Titans, it's about figuring out, they're not going to the Super Bowl this year necessarily based on the early results, but it's about figuring out who this guy is and can he continue to make these improvements. So we're just from my vantage point, I'm just trying to figure out what's fair and what there is gray area with.
Yeah, and I hope people listening, I know, you and I have become good friends and you know how I see the game. I hope people listening know that I don't rip people. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't talk, well, oh, this guy stinks, or, so there are certain things that I don't know, and I'm more than willing to say that. I mean, and the other thing people do have to remember is Will Levis has not even played the equivalent of a full season yet. He started 11 games in this league, okay? And he was not considered a can't miss prospect. So, he went through a season last year playing behind the worst offensive line in the league. As you said, the offensive line has been a little problematic in pass protection in both games. So he's been under a little too much duress, more than you'd like. So he's working through that too. So, let's give him a chance. The run game has been a little sporadic. It's, there have been some good moments, but there's not been enough. In other words, they haven't been able to count on the run game as a true foundation. And then you get punts blocked in each game, which makes it seem worse on the because everything comes back to the quarterback, as you know.
Yeah.
No matter how the game plays out, all people want to talk about is the quarterback. So the way you described it was perfect. Let's try to be as fair as possible. There are some things we don't know. There are some things we do know, and that clearly have to be cleaned up. But let's understand that he started 11 NFL games.
And to your point, Greg, like with the Titans and just generally the last couple of years, right? Everything is overly scrutinized when you can't score. And they're topping out at 17 points again, which is putting a lot of stress on the defense. They had 5 3-and-outs in this game in particular. The defense, Aaron Rodgers wasn't overwhelmingly special in this game, but
No,
he was clean enough and efficient enough to get it done in the second half against a defense that was absolutely gassed.
right. And I thought the defense, I think their defense for the most part has played well through 2
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you saw L'Jarius Sneed traveling. He didn't do this in the first game, but he stayed almost exclusively with Garrett Wilson.
And actually, Wilson had 2 catches on the outside versus Sneed. His first 2 catches came when he was in the slot and Sneed was not on him. And then he had 2 versus Sneed. One was a quick slant for 9 yards. The other was on that touchdown drive. I believe it was on the touchdown drive that ended with Allen's 12-yard or not the TD reception, the TD run, which I'm trying to remember how long that 20-yard TD run.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was on
Braylon
the
Allen,
touchdown
fun player, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, that one he just got beat on the the route. I wasn't really sure what the route exactly was, but it was kind of an improvised fade on that drive. But Snead played him really, really well. I mean, Snead was not the issue, but the problem is when you're for fans is when you lose games every play gets magnified.
Mhm.
And, so one play seems like, oh, well, that guy stinks, because we lost. You have to take a longer view. Look, coaches don't want to lose any game, but, they have to also try to be realistic in terms of what they see. There's always things to coach and correct. But I think the defense overall has played well.
Yeah, and I guess that's the next place that I'd like to go, Greg, before we talk about this Packers game, because obviously the Packers are working through some situations of their own right now, particularly at quarterback. As we get further into an NFL season, and I know 2 weeks isn't a huge sample size, but are you starting to be able to discern maybe tendencies that this Titans defense has to its structure, to the type of scheme that Denard Wilson and his particular flair
Um,
is trying to run?
Not totally,
Yeah.
because, for instance, they didn't. Rodgers is a guy you normally don't want to pressure, okay? And so they only rushed 5 on 9 of his 33 dropbacks. I would bet that depending on who they're playing, that number would increase. But with Rodgers, because he gets it out so quick and he sees it so quick, and he's always willing to throw fade balls, whether it's over the top or back shoulder. Obviously, he threw the big fade to Williams, which was really good coverage by Awuzie. It was just, what can you say? It was a great throw, great catch by Williams. That was 2nd and 16 on that fourth quarter touchdown drive. So, I don't think we know exactly yet what Denard Wilson is going to do, other than you and I both know he'll want to be aggressive, but it depends on who you're playing. Just making a quick transition to Green Bay, it's not likely that a lot of that'll happen this week. Now, if it's 3rd and long, a number of times it could happen, but I don't think Green Bay's going to play that way on offense. I mean, on 3rd and long, they're not going, assuming it's Malik Willis. I know that Jordan Love's, was back at practice, but I would doubt. We're speaking on a Thursday. I would really doubt he'd play this week, but I guess you never know. Stranger things have happened. But let's assume it's Malik Willis. I don't think that Matt LaFleur and the Packers, when it's 3rd and 11, would really ask Willis to have to drop back and make deep progression reads. You'd probably see quarterback draws, screens, anything that limits what Malik Willis is going to do on 3rd and long. So this might not be a game where you see high pressure either.
Yeah, and that's what their game against the Colts was, right? They're just trying to protect Malik Willis and protect themselves, their offense, from turning the ball over or
Yeah,
putting
and
themselves
and
in
and when
situations.
the other team doesn't score, as was the case with the Colts, you can play that way. I mean, Josh
Yeah.
Jacobs had 21st half carries, ended up with 32. You can do that when your defense is not giving up any points. Now if your defense suddenly, if by chance the Titans, come out and score on their first 3 possessions, then the game changes, and then Malik Willis then you have to have a drop back passing game. They didn't need a drop back passing game this week. He did make a couple of good throws. I don't want to sell him short. He did make a couple of really good throws, but for the most part, he didn't need to do a lot of that. I
Right.
mean, look, the Packers controlled the ball for more than 40 minutes. They ran the ball 53 times, which did include a couple of Willis scrambles, but it's not as if he scrambled 10 times. So, the Packers ran 39 plays in the first half, and Jacobs ran the ball on 20 of them.
Yeah. Malik ended up 12 of 14 for 163 yards, so completing, just over
No,
85%
he was
of his
within the
passes.
context of what he was asked to do. And keep in mind, you've also got the read factor in the run game. He was featured in the run game from offset backfield alignments, by the way. Not and jet sweep. So I mean, you have to be careful about read. They use a ton of motion. I mean, these are things you have to be very, very aware of when you play the Packers. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
Willis was outstanding on 3rd down. I mean, he was 7 for 8 for 94 yards. He did hit the Wicks touchdown. All this stuff was basic reads. They didn't really ask him to read a lot. But the fact is he executed. So that he executed what he was asked to do at a really good level.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
listen, I'm just asking for, at least locally, I'm just asking for the guy on the other side of the ball this week.
Yeah,
Same thing, it's sometimes, Greg, football is detailed, not overwhelmingly complicated, right?
correct.
This is that, and that at the core of it is just don't turn the ball over, don't put yourself in harm's way, and more often than not, you're going to give yourself the best opportunity to win the football game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a great example of Willis, doing something well. I mean, on there was a third quarter possession. I believe it was the first one. It was 3rd and 9. He ended up throwing to Tucker Kraft for 17 yards. So they converted. It was a 7-step timing drop. It was one of the few times that it was a true drop back pass. Okay. There was a 3-man vertical route concepts and 2 late drag routes as checkdowns. Willis had nothing down the field, and he went to Kraft. It might seem simple, but he went to Kraft with good timing, giving him room to run after the catch. Sometimes guys wait way too long to throw checkdowns, and that allows the defense to rally up, and a checkdown becomes, you see guys get hit the second they catch the ball.
Yeah.
This was a good job by Willis. It was well timed. He did hit Dobbs for 39 yards on a 3rd and 5. Again, not a difficult read because it was one-on-one outside the numbers, and it was clear as a bell. And every coach would tell you, you go to the one-on-one outside the numbers. But he made a good throw, and Dobbs made an excellent leaping catch. So Willis did exactly what he was asked to do.
On the defensive side of the ball, Greg, they've got a lot of talent, and I mean the front is got a lot of horsepower up front. The back end is really talented as well, with Xavier McKinney and Jair Alexander and Javon Bullard, of course, as well. Defensively, we don't know what their game plan is going to be necessarily, and maybe too early on to tell too many tendencies from Matt. I'm blanking. Is it Hafley? The defensive
Hafley, yeah, it's Hafley. Yeah,
from Boston College. So this is his first year in the pros, and we're still learning about him as a coach. But obviously, in the first 2 games that they've played, because it's been Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson, the emphasis has been to contain with the rush as opposed to just outright get sacks. Fair to expect that there might be some differentiation.
Yeah,
they're playing Will Levis.
Hafley's a pressure guy based on his background. So obviously you just mentioned 2 quarterbacks they played that you might decide not to pressure as much or to pressure a certain way. But I think against this offense, this O-line and Will Levis, you're going to see more pressure situationally for sure. Hafley definitely is a pressure guy from his background. He's got some pretty cool concepts. You're going to see that this week.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting game. Certainly, there's compelling storylines, but also compelling football.
No, I mean, look, in every game, you're trying to get your offense off to a good start and score. I mean, that's not a profound statement, obviously, but I mean, I think in this game, that's really important because you want to put the Packers. And I'm not saying they're going to score so much that they're going to run away with the game, but you just want to make the game becomes different when you're losing. Okay, even if you're losing, by a score, maybe you're losing by 10, you start all of a sudden to get to the second quarter, maybe into the third quarter, and it's just a different feel of a game. That you've been watching football, so you want to be ahead in this game because you don't want the Packers to be able to play the way they played last week. You want Willis to have to become a drop back passer sometime meaningfully in this game.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately for Titans fans, they've been able to get leads early on in these games. It's just making sure that they hold on to the leads has been the issue.
Yeah, well, again, those block punts are, and I'm not a special teams guru, so I'm not going to speak to those as far as what happened because I don't know enough about it, other than it shouldn't happen. But those things, everybody knows those things can't happen. I mean, you're a team right now that's just trying to find its way a little bit, and they could have won both games and could have, should have. We know all that, but the bottom line is, when you're trying to find your way on both sides of the ball with a new coaching staff, you can't have those kinds of problems. You just can't. You have to. If you lose the game just because, hey, you didn't make enough plays, fine. That then you keep working and you hopefully can do that. But you can't lose because of stupid mistakes.
Absolutely. We've got Thursday Night Football tonight. That's obviously not on the matchup show. Patriots at the Jets. Jets getting a tough schedule, having to play a Monday night game, then coming here.
They're a little better than people think.
Yeah, it's well, they're again, everybody just trying to kind of get their feet under themselves right in the early part of the season, Greg, whether you're an experienced veteran team or a team with a lot of young pieces and parts. I think the same could be said about a lot of these teams. Now. But in particular, Greg, I have to imagine that the Texans and the Vikings made the matchup show this week.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it's funny. I was talking to my matchup guys, and I was saying that there's really three teams that have really stood out to me, and 3 defenses in particular that I really find fun to watch: the Texans, the Vikings, and the Saints. Now, everybody with the Saints, of course, is going to talk about Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara, as deservedly so, but you know, those three defenses, I've through 2 weeks, small sample size, you know how the league is. I mean, we could be having a totally different conversation in 4 weeks, but this is what we have now. And the tape don't lie. So,
Right.
those defenses I find really intriguing to watch for multiple reasons. But this Houston Minnesota game is a really interesting week 3 matchup. And yes, it is in the matchup show.
I mean, Brian Flores had Brock Purdy. I mean, Purdy made some nice throws in that Niners game, but he had him in an absolute blender, it looked like from my
Well,
vantage.
the thing is that they do give up yards. They're not one of those shut down like you think, oh, they don't give up any yards. Because if I told you before the game, Buck, that Purdy would throw for over 300 and Jordan Mason would rush for 100, you'd probably say Niners win, wouldn't you?
Yeah, comfortably, probably.
Yeah, yeah. So they do give up yards. They're not one of those like, the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens where they literally just shut you right, or the Legion of Boom where they literally just shut you down and you can't move the ball. But they're difficult to play against tactically, but they do give up yards.
Yeah. Now they're giving up about 320 yards a game right now while only allowing teams to score 11 and a half against
Right,
them.
and
So it kind of articulates that.
I think they lead the league, and again, 2 games means nothing, but I
Mhm.
think they lead the league in sacks through 2 games.
I would absolutely believe that with the way that Flores is getting after these quarterbacks right now. In particular, what pieces are you working on for the matchup show this week, Greg, that people need to pay attention to on ESPN?
Well, I did a piece that I'm particularly proud of on Steve Spagnuolo's pressures. He had a sack, which turned out to be the last play of the game for the Bengals offense, which to me was a Steve Spagnuolo special. And I saw it live on TV Sunday, and I knew immediately that was a film piece because my eyes just catch certain things when I watch games, even though I'm not sitting home taking notes. Because I know these coaches, particularly Spags, who's been doing it for a long time. So I saw it and I said, I'm doing that play. And so I broke that down for the Chiefs Falcons game. There's some really interesting run game pieces that I did this week that I hope people will watch regarding the Chargers and the Bills, because the Bills have made it clear that they don't want every game to be the Josh Allen experience. And I think that's the right approach. So I did 2 running pieces, one for the Bills and one for the Chargers, that there's a bigger context to the pieces. They're not just, oh, look at a nice run. There's a much larger context that I think is interesting.
Yeah, and that's a tough test for the Chargers on the road at the Steelers
Yeah,
this week.
that's kind of an old school game, but both teams are 2-0. So one of those teams is going to be 3-0, Buck. That's the thing. When Sunday's done, one of those teams is going to be 3-0.
Absolutely. Well, you can check out the NFL matchup show with Greg Cosell, with Darius Butler, with Sal Pal on ESPN to get you ready for the football weekend. You can catch it on demand at ESPN Plus as well. You can do what I do. I set my DVR and I can watch Greg and the crew as I need to. Buddy, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for accommodating the schedule, and I look forward to doing it again with you next week.
All right, Buck. Always enjoy it. Thanks.